gathering here to hear Jesus.
He's touring all of Galilee.
And God has provided a way for us to hear him today.
I could hear better if God had provided some barley soup or even some bread and cheese.
Don't set your mind on such things, Judith. It'll only make you hungrier.
When my mind feasts on the thought of food, my feet don't cry so loud at this long standing. Oh, look, there's Ophelia.
Judith, Aziel, it's so good to see you. Oh, isn't this wonderful?
We're enjoying it. It's long, but we're enjoying it. Where's Benjamin?
Oh, he's over there. He sent me to find my son. Have you seen?
No. What is your problem? All right.
Well, I had the wisdom to eat before we left. Oh, Jesus told us to sit down.
Oh, thank heavens. Oh, here, sit with us. Becker will show up. Don't worry.
Is Benjamin here?
Oh, yes. We've been to all of these meetings, even before he came to Galenitis. Jesus had to leave Galilee because of Herod.
Oh, we heard about that terrible happening with his friend John the Baptist.
Yes. And Benjamin says that Herod thinks Jesus is John the Baptist risen from the dead.
Herod would think that. Oh, I mean, how does he explain John and Jesus when they're both together?
I don't know. He may not even know about that. Benjamin heard one of Jesus' disciples teaching in Nazareth all about John the Baptist and what he had been preaching about before he baptized.
Did he tell about Salome? Because that is what I would like to hear. I heard that she twirled around Herod with all those veils until he would have done anything she asked. Dirty old man. Thinking he can get by with adultery just because he's Herod. I don't know what this world is coming to. A body is not safe, you know. Thieves roaming around, free as grass. Children being snatched from their homes for evil purposes. Oh, don't worry. Oh, these people are good. Oh, they may be foolish to stay at a meeting like this for so long, but they are good. Oh, what's happening up there?
Jesus and the disciples are gathering about something. The disciples look kind of worried, but Jesus doesn't.
He never is. He's compassionate. And he cares about everything that people around him care about, but he never worries. Do you know what I mean?
No, dear, I don't. When I worry about something, I worry. But then again, he is a man. Men don't worry well. Aziel didn't worry at all until I helped him do it.
But I feel Jesus is just as much for me as he is for Benjamin. He makes me feel a woman is a good thing to me.
I've always thought a woman is a good thing to me. It's getting the men to think that is what's difficult. Oh, what's happening up there now?
Jesus is praying, I think. He's got something small in his hand. Pouch. There's a little boy there with the disciples. The one called Andrew's holding his hand.
Becker! Becker! Oh, that's his lunch in Jesus' hands. I tied it in a cloth to wrap tied to his belt this morning. Oh no, I hope Jesus isn't going to eat that. It's leftovers. Oh, look, Benjamin has seen him too. Becker was with me. I only took my eyes off of him for 1 second.
You want me to go get him for you?
No. I don't want anyone to know that he's mine. To get a thing like that. Oh, I can't believe you could do this.
Jesus is dividing the lunch between the disciples.
Dividing what? It's only about... It's only a few leftover fish and about 5 rolls. They're not even fresh. Oh, why didn't I make fresh rolls this morning?
Why should you? You didn't know your son was going to have a picnic with Jesus.
Well, I don't think they're going to eat it themselves.
Good.
They're dividing it between the people.
What good will that do? Do they really think feeding one person out of 5,000 will leave the rest of us contented? I think it's time for us to go back to Bethsaida. I've got some fruit. You and Benjamin can come, and Becker can stand in the corner, and...
The people are being fed.
With what? Not Becker's lunch. I know what I put in that lunch, and I know what he already took out of it. He ate the grapes. Good grapes. A big bunch. At least if he hadn't eaten those, at least one rope would have had a grape for each person. Oh, wait till I get that child home. I've never been so embarrassed.
No. The people are being fed. It's a miracle. We're watching a miracle, Judith.
This has turned out to be quite the thing.
I'm going to go back to Benjamin now. Oh, what disciple is that coming this way?
Oh, that's Philip. I've known him since he was a little boy. He's from Bethsaida, you know.
Each row is being fed. Each row. Look at the disciples' faces. They didn't even know it was going to happen.
I must get back to Benjamin. He may not know what's happening.
I'll tell Philip to tell Becker where you are.
Thank you.
Sit down, Judith. He's telling us all to sit down.
I'm sitting. Oh, Philip, how's your mother? I want him to know where we are. We might get a second helping. Well, you never can tell.
It's a miracle, Judith. A mighty sign from God. And there you are trying to get a second helping.
It looks to me like there's going to be plenty. And there's nothing wrong with being friendly. Hi! Oh, his mother is going to be so happy to hear about this. She's been worried to death about him getting enough to eat.
We handed it out. And it multiplied in our hands. And there were 12 baskets full left over. The people tried to make Jesus king by force. Their force.
So Jesus went away to a mountain to be alone. We disciples, we went down to the Sea of Galilee. We were going to Capernaum. We entered a boat. It became very dark. The sea was rising because of a great wind.
It became very hard to keep our course. Straining with all our might. We can only manage 3 or 4 miles. Storms on the Sea of Galilee can come very suddenly and can be very severe. We were getting nowhere. Those that had fed the multitude with Jesus would drown on the sea without him. Then Peter cried out, "Look!" And we beheld an apparition in light coming to us upon the waves. You know, light in the tunnel, we were afraid. But then, from the light, the voice of Jesus.
It is I. Do not be afraid.
He was coming to us on the water, and the waves that had cursed our oars blessed his feet with tenderness. Jesus! We received him into the boat, and as soon as we had done so, we were at the dry land. It was a miracle upon the water. Jesus, the public Messiah, had come in a private sign unto his men. Nothing was quite the same after that. We went with him as he went, healing the sick, teaching the crowds, speaking at the synagogues, and always we knew that this Jesus had a place for each and every one of us in his kingdom. And always the Pharisees were there. They were at every meeting. They were lurking bystanders at every healing. They lurked and looked and lingered only to defame him. One day, Jesus met them openly in the temple after the Feast of the Tabernacles. If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. And to the Pharisees, he said, I am the light of the world. If you abide in my word, you will find truth. And that truth will set you free.
We are Abraham's seed, and have never been in bondage to any man. Our father is Abraham.
Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he did see it, and he was glad.
You are not yet 50 years old. And have you seen Abraham?
Before Abraham was, I am. And they took up stones to cast at him. But Jesus hid himself and went away from the temple. And as he was going, he saw a man blind from birth, and he healed his eyes with clay.
Of light for some sewing. Come up, you know the way. Greetings, cousin.
Oh, greetings and news. But here, I brought you a plate of sesame cakes, cut thin and crisp. They're delicious.
They might have been, cousin. I'll never know. The platter's empty?
Yes, I was afraid of that. I ate a few as I was hurrying here. Never meant to eat them all, but they were good. Oh. Keep the platter.
Oh. Thank you, cousin. I do believe this one's mine.
Yes. I borrowed it so long ago. I've come to think of it quite as my own. Now that it's returned, I'll miss it.
If you ever have need of it again, just let me know. I'd be glad to.
Thank you. But now I have a story of wonder to tell you. Beggar, the blind beggar by the temple. Oh, you know the one I mean?
Born blind, yes.
Why, yes. Until yesterday that was true. Now they say that he sees.
How wonderful! How did this happen?
He was healed.
Cousin, I can't hear you.
Well, I'm afraid to speak the name. The very walls have ears.
The walls might, but not the sky. Come on, tell me.
Jesus. Shh. If you ask, you never heard it from me. I'm not one to go against the law. I have nothing to say.
Which is why you came here in such a hurry?
I came to bring you the sesame cakes, of course.
The ones you ate?
Ah, yes. Well, that was an accident along the way.
Well, that explains it. Now, tell me, what happened?
Well, the beggar by the temple was healed by Jesus. You know, on the Sabbath. You know who healed him with clay pressed against the lidded eyes. On the Sabbath. Not very smart with the Pharisees watching everything he did. Is that a bowl of pods and honey?
Yes, Eli was eating them before the evening meeting. Would you care to have some?
Why, good. I'll just take a few on this platter here. Why, yes. Healed and clean as a raindrop. And a healing just as rare. For never before a man born blind. No one even recognized him for. A seen face is much different than seeing face with no sight. Besides, he looked far less humble walking straight ahead like he did. In fact, I have it from very reliable sources that the beggar spoke quite openly with the Pharisees, who insisted that the prophet could not be from God because he had done all that working with clay on the Sabbath. But the beggar insisted that he must be from God, otherwise he could never have performed such a miracle in the first place. Which was no way of argument for the Pharisees, except to say that he had never been blind. There's so much semen in baking powders. Everyone has seen him lying there begging. Oh, what a shame. I've run out of pots and still have some honey left.
Help yourself, there's plenty.
Thank you. So, they called in the beggar's parents, who said they knew but 2 things out of 3. They were shaking in their sandals being called in like that. 2 things out of 3, they said. This was the son, and he had been born blind. But as to how, and as to why he now sees, is past their understanding. And well, for them, the edge of ignorance, because knowing too much can get you into more trouble than knowing too little. Besides, they would have been kicked out of the synagogue for taking sides as to how and as to by whom the how became the why, if you know what I mean.
Not really.
Well, think about it, dear cousin. A man born blind now sees. It's a miracle. A sign which might make some think that someone is the M-E-S-S-I-A-H. I never said it. I only spelled a word very dear to our highest hopes and dreams. But now the beggar has been whisked out of the synagogue, never to enjoy its sweet fellowship and communion. But the talk is of the sign, healing a man born blind. But it is not for that I came. I came to borrow these few pods and honey. Now, don't let me keep you from your sewing. Goodbye, dear cousin.
Signs, great signs. In Cana, water turned into wine. In Capernaum, a centurion's son brought back from the brink of death. In Jerusalem, a man infirm for many years healed. And on a mountaintop near Bethsaida, over 5,000 people fed with a handful of fish and leftover bread.
A storm on the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus walks through it on the water. Healing of a man born blind, and in the little village of Bethany, a man raised from the dead.
My name is Martha. My brother, Lazarus, died and lay dead in a tomb for 4 days. Jesus had been in our home many times. He and Lazarus were friends. I sent him a message telling him of Lazarus' illness. He was in Perea, only a few days' journey from Bethany. He'd healed a blind man on the Sabbath, further irritating the Sanhedrin. There was much talk of stoning Jesus, and the disciples warned him not to return to Judea at this time. But he ignored their warnings and moved on to Jerusalem for the Passover. Along the way, he stopped at Bethany. I heard that he was coming to us, and I went to meet him just outside the city with the news of Lazarus' death. Christ asked me if I believed in the immortality of the soul. I recited the creed that I knew my brother would rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Have you ever realized how pitifully incompetent words are at handling grief? Phrases about immortality seem minimized by the sudden size of a dead body. I believed in all that my religion had taught me. And yet, as I said the words, we murmur hopefully in sorrow. They seem to bear no relationship to my dead brother. Oh Lord, if only you had been here, he would not have died. Jesus said, I myself am the resurrection and the life. The man who believes in me will live, even though he dies. Can you believe that? I told him that I believed him to be the Messiah. And then he asked me to go and get Mary, who had not left the house when I did.
I ran to meet him all the time thinking, like Martha, if only he had been here. If only he had been here. Jesus was deeply moved at seeing the grief at our brother's death. I took him to see the tomb, and as we approached it, there was a crowd gathered around it. I'm always surprised at the crowd that death gathers. We appreciate the comfort, and sometimes hearing others weep with you can help lessen the burden. I was surprised to find that at such a time we had a house full of company that had to be sheltered and endlessly fed, and in some gracious way involved in the activities of grieving. It's helpful, it's all helpful. But the social nature of the funeral is a surprising thing. As we walked to the cemetery, I was relieved to find that there was no need to talk with Christ of other things. We do that, you know. as though it were not polite to speak of death around a cemetery. Jesus was never like that, though. He was a realist. He dismissed nothing that was and offered nothing that could not be. As we got to the tomb, Jesus said for us to open it. "Take away the stone," he said.
I reminded him that the body had been in the cave for some time, had begun to decompose. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. None of us wanted to see him as he was now. The spices and the ointments covered the odor of rotting flesh. There was no reason for us to reveal the corpse. But Jesus was definite in his request, and the stone was rolled away.
I hid my eyes. The women around me all shuddered and turned aside. Even professional mourners did not expect to view a dead body after such a time. I was surprised to hear Jesus' voice call out as a ringing command, "Lazarus, come out!"
I couldn't believe it. I knew he had claimed some power over death. But I had wrapped my brother's body, and I knew how very dead death is.
Someone screamed. I opened my eyes to see the form of my brother wrapped in grave clothes, standing outside the tomb. His face is still covered with a handkerchief, and his hands and feet were still wrapped for death.
Jesus said, "Unbind him and let him go home." I remember at first we were afraid to touch him. I don't know why.
I think we were disoriented by what had happened. Victory over death meant a change in the world order. Was it safe to breathe the air? Would the ground hold our steps? What would it be like living in a day that had seen death give back its victim?
The crowd went wild, and I remember we could scarcely get Lazarus home for people touching him and calling out to him. He seemed perfectly at ease, as though the whole thing had been within his comprehension. I must say he handled himself quite well within his set of notoriety. Fame was not a burden to him. In fact, I think he rather enjoyed it. He spoke on his resurrection at dinners and meetings and any gathering that could be arranged. I used to tease him that he used a lot more words to tell about his resurrection than Jesus actually used to do it.
Many of the Jews, because of this miracle, this seventh great sign, believed that Jesus was the Christ of God. But there were those who went to the Pharisees and told them of all that Jesus had done. And the high priests and the Pharisees convened a council, and from that day forward, they planned to kill him.
You gentlemen asked to see me? Yes, I'm a loyal Jew. I look forward to the kingdom and believe it is near. I know him, this Jesus. He's a man of good intentions. I'm very close to him. He trusts me, and I trust him. I would not like to see him hurt, but I agree with you. He's often ill-advised in his actions. He knows nothing of the course of expediency, the cost of the kingdom coming. He heals the deaf, yet his ear is deaf towards me. Perhaps we could work together for the kingdom. It will be very difficult to catch him. He has great power. The one who turns his steps towards you would have to take certain risks. 10 pieces of silver. The going price for a slave is 20. 30. So let it be. I'll watch him for you. If I see a time of vulnerability, I'll let you know. Perhaps after the Passover. His manner collect supporters. What do they know? These followers who lean into the wind to catch his every word, who waste their precious oils and perfumes on his head, who brush past me to touch his garment. They are fools. But we indeed are wise.
They tell me that in Jerusalem, where your son, the Rabbi, was arrested, in the garden where he often went to pray, he came to my wedding and changed the empty vats into vats full of good wine. I remember him as a man about to do great things.
The one who healed the master's son was tried by the Sanhedrin late one night, because they feared him greatly. Now he did a service for this family. See the child grown strong. It was but a word from Jesus that pulled him from his dying. They may not tell the child of this viciousness in Jerusalem. Children find it hard to understand such things.
I hear that the man who healed Gurney has been tried by Pilate. Twice. The charges seem most unlikely of the man I saw striding up the ramps of invalids. I'd believe it more of the two men behind Rhonda's booth. They seemed evil bent.